there, everyone. I'm James Milan, and this is Talk of the Town, and a special Talk of the Town because we haven't had a legislative update with our representative, Dave Rogers, in quite a while, and so we are very, very happy to welcome Representative Rogers back into the studio. Dave, thanks so much for joining us.
James, it's great to be here. It's good to be with you.
So we do share Dave with a couple of other communities, of course, but I like to refer to him as one of our representatives. And what we want to do basically today, Dave, I just want to kind of pick up the reins where we left off a couple of years ago now. It's really been way too long.
Oh, that long? I didn't realize.
Did one of these legislative
Because we've done a bunch
updates.
of them over the years, but
absolutely,
I didn't realize it's been a while.
Yeah, we were in a good rhythm, and
Yeah.
we intend to get back there.
Great.
So this is the beginning of that, and I want to just look back at the first 8 months or so of the current session, which I know is a 2-year session that started in January of this year, right?
Yeah.
But we want to look at what was done in those first 8 months, or what progress you've made, and then spend some time, of course, looking at your own agenda and what you hope to be able to accomplish, or what kind of major bills or major issues you're going to be sponsoring and or just intrinsic to, et cetera, going forward. And then I am going to ask, because you've been congenial about this in the past, just to talk about the broader picture
Sure.
as well, because I think people are going to be curious how it feels, what it's like in the State House under this second Trump administration on the federal level, but also, just working with your Democratic and Republican colleagues in the Massachusetts State House at the moment. So let's start, if you don't mind, with just talking about, any progress made on issues of particular importance to you, et cetera. Just give us an update on what the major, what greatest hits there were for you.
Yeah.
As a rep in January through August.
Great. Well, once again, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me. And so a couple big things come to mind. I'm chair of the Higher Education Committee in the legislature, and in our most recent budget, we continued something that just started the previous year, which is completely free community college. So in our state now, community college is free, tuition and fees. And for some students, depending on income, in addition to free tuition and fees, no fees or tuition, a stipend for books, for some other expenses. And so that's been a really big breakthrough in our state, and has led to, and I've met with community college presidents, and there's an association that represents the community colleges, like record-breaking uptick in attendance or enrollment. Yeah, enrollment has really risen dramatically, like double digits. So that's encouraging.
Absolutely.
To see people who are seeing this opportunity to further their education, which is good, of course, in their individual lives, but also good for the state as they learn more, get more skills, more knowledge, and maybe will get out and start their own business or whatever they choose to do with their careers. And then beyond free community college, in addition, for people with family incomes of $110,000 or less, other colleges, our UMass system, our 9 state universities, their tuition and fees will be cut in half.
That is
so dramatic.
Yeah, that is really dramatic news. And I do remember hearing about the community college piece, when that passed last year or the year before, and thinking, whoa, that is definitely a game changer. But as you just described it again, are there, I just want to make sure I do understand this. Basically, what you've just said is pretty categorical. Anybody who wants to attend a community college can do so for free on the tuition end and the fees end.
That's right. There are a couple, criteria or stipulations that you have to enroll in a certain amount of credits and so forth. So it's not literally everyone in the state. There are a couple different benchmarks or requirements, but it's opened up the floodgates really to
Yeah.
a lot of people, and as well as I said at our other universities, not just community college, and for the education of your viewers, if they didn't already know, this is possible because of the new Fair Share Amendment revenue. So we raised, well, the voters really raised. It was on a ballot question presented to the voters statewide. First, we had to vote on it in the legislature twice in what's called a constitutional convention. And the reason is that our state constitutions has a flat tax. It mandates that everyone, regardless of income, could be a billionaire, or you could be an entry-level worker. You pay the same state income tax, same percentage. And so to change that, we needed to amend the Constitution. So first, we in the legislature voted, which was requirement if you want to amend the Constitution. We voted, the House and Senate together, to advance this, and then people have to collect lots of signatures to get it on the ballot. It's complicated to get something on the ballot. When we all go vote in November and there's a ballot question there, a lot goes into putting that question in front of us.
And I know that things can work their way through the legislature for months or years before they can get to the ballot. To the ballot, right?
That's right. And in this case, because it was a constitutional amendment, it had to be approved by the voters. So it went to the voters, it passed, and it raises a 4% surcharge on incomes over $1 million. Not assets, because you'd sweep in a lot of people with the value of their 401k retirement savings or the value of the equity in their home. You'd sweep in probably too many people.
Right. A lot of people here in Arlington, I can tell you.
Yeah, it would be probably unwise. But this is actually on income. Your actual earnings are above $1 million. So whether they're equity, private equity people or bond traders or just people who make, elite level athletes or owners of the elite level athlete sports teams, people with a lot of money. And even with the rise of inflation and cost, if you're making over $1 million, you're making a lot of money.
You're making a lot of money. And I do think that's why the Fair Share Amendment has always been popular among most of us.
Yeah, that's right. And it passed, and the revenue from it has exceeded expectations. So people who were proponents of it, who did studies and analysis, predicted, X, and it's turned out to be Y. It's turned out to be more than predicted. And as a consequence, in an otherwise difficult budget picture, that's one thing that's been a bright spot. And we're putting the money to good use. It has to be spent in two ways, either on education or transportation, one or the other. That was how it was presented to the voters. That's how they voted on and approved it. And we have honored that in the legislature, even setting up special accounts that the money goes to. And but it's opened up these amazing opportunities. A lot of new money's going into the T to make critical repairs. We have the world's, the country's, maybe the world's oldest public transportation system. A lot of the parts the public never sees. We all see the cars or the buses, but the parts the public doesn't see, the electrical grid, the switches, the mechanical engineering that goes into our public transportation, particularly our subways, is very outdated, outmoded, whatever the word is, and so antiquated. And just we need to get our system up to what's called a state of good repair.
Absolutely.
That's the term of art used by transportation planners, state of good repair. And we have billions to go to get us to a state of good repair. But real progress is being made. The slow zones on the T are gone now. There were slow zones on the Red Line and other lines. That's been eliminated. We have Philip Eng, who's the new general manager of the T, who's getting generally very good praise, good marks for doing well in the job.
Expanded coverage, I know, as well, or
That's
expanded service, like later at night.
That's right. So it's we still have a long way to go. The T, it took years and years and years and years, sadly, for the T to fall into below average performance, underinvestment, and it's going to take some years to get it out. But I'm at least hopeful that over time, we're more and more going to get the 21st century transportation system that we deserve. And so, so this all started with your question about this year and what we've been working on. And so the budget and budgeting is a big part of what we do in the legislature. And those are some of the breakthroughs: the free community college, the free, almost free or 50% reduction, I should say, for other university students, depending on their family income. And so there are good things happening. And I always say the good things happening here are an antidote to some of the really, pardon the apocalyptic terms, sort of the cataclysmic headlines we see in the national news, with sort of going through a period of great turmoil in our national life, or at least our national politics, I should say.
No, I think I think anybody will be happy to note that this conversation has started in a positive place, thanks to your choice of those particular topics. And I will say that both staff and our beloved interns here at ACMi are going to be glad to know that more money's going into the T to improve service all the time. They are also dependent on it. We are also dependent on that public infrastructure. That really is great news. And when you first started talking about the free community college and then that reduction in tuition and fees for other schools in the system, I was like, this sounds too good to be true. That's where the money comes from. It came from the Fair Share Amendment. And that
sometimes called the millionaire's tax.
Exactly. It often is called the millionaire's tax, absolutely. And it reminded me of something, Dave, which I want to ask you about. Over the years, as you've held different positions and different committees and stuff like that, I know that you were right at the heart of when the cannabis industry began to open dispensaries here, and there was an anticipation that there would be a good revenue stream coming from that as well that could be applied to all kinds of areas. Can I just ask you for what the update is on that at this point? Because I've actually heard different things in the media about both the industry itself and how it's operating here, but also about what benefit we are deriving or not.
The cannabis revenue is quite high. I don't have a precise dollar figure for it. I can get that quickly, but it's generated significant revenue that we're expending on lots of important services. You probably read about, or be hard to miss, some of the turmoil in the CCC. That's the Cannabis Control Commission. It's the commission, the state agency that regulates and oversees the cannabis industry. And former treasurer Shannon O'Brien, who was also a gubernatorial candidate. She ran against Mitt Romney in 2002, was the Democratic nominee. She was also a state rep and a state senator and the treasurer. And she was sort of summarily dismissed, fired by our current state treasurer, Deborah Goldberg. Became a big brouhaha with Goldberg alleging that Shannon O'Brien had engaged in some really inappropriate conduct in the workplace. Shannon O'Brien pushing back through her lawyers, saying that's simply untrue, and they went into litigation.
Wow.
It was litigated, and the litigation, during litigation, there's the discovery process where documents are produced, depositions, interrogatories, information's produced, and sort of the information that came to light during the litigation, it was cast a bad light on the CCC. By the way, there are plenty of hardworking, dedicated public servants at the CC, it should be said, but there clearly were problems and dysfunction there as well. And long story short, the litigation, a judge just ruled in favor of Shannon O'Brien that she could be restored to her position at the CCC, I think with back pay or whatever. And first, Deborah Goldberg, our current state treasurer, said, I may appeal this decision. In the end, I think just last week she announced she's not going to appeal. She's not going to fight it any further, so which is good. That's
so
put to bed.
Hopeful end to the brouhaha now, maybe.
One of the big stories in the cannabis industry right now, just in general, is when they were first launched, there were very few of them because it was difficult to go through all the regulatory hurdles, get the financing, hire employees, find an appropriate storefront, because the zoning in different towns is often zoned kind of on the outskirts of town, because zones were leery about where to put these places. The law required they have some zoning, that somewhere they were allowed to go. But what towns did to meet that requirement is often put them, more on the
Just very much in the
perimeter of the towns. Let's not have a cannabis store right in the town center. So it was slow going at first to really launch a lot of stores. But now, 7, 8 years later, since it was legalized, there are a lot more of these stores.
Yeah.
And with supply and demand in the market, because there are more stores, and I don't understand all the details of the cannabis market, but generally what's happened is the price has come down for consumers, which is generally good.
but maybe not so much for those.
But it's caused that right now there are a number of cannabis operators. Some are doing real well. Some are thriving. But I think a number are running on tight margins, and I think a number will probably go out of business.
Yeah, and that's actually, that last thing that you mentioned is kind of what has seeped into the public conversation that I have heard and read. That there's this kind of, there was a feeding frenzy, and and as a result, it is not the attractive business that it seemed to be at the beginning, and not the guaranteed slam dunk that it seemed to be at the beginning.
That's right, and I think a lot of people, it's this new thing. It's exciting if you're an entrepreneurial person who's attracted to a challenge and a new opportunity, which is the way entrepreneurial people think. It seemed like, okay, this is a real exciting opportunity, potentially lucrative. And I think, I'm not an expert, but what I believe is some people got into it who didn't necessarily have a lot of retail experience. In other words, they might be kind of entrepreneurial and pretty creative thinkers when it comes to business, but didn't necessarily have a solid training and background in retail. Well, you really need to understand, how do you organize a retail store? How do you display the products? How do you hire the right people? How do you light the store? How do you decorate the store? What location do you choose where you locate your store? All the things that any business would have to do to think in an intelligent way about how to launch and run a successful retail business. And I think my sense is probably some folks got into this not fully understanding what they were getting into.
Like you said, we won't talk about this for any longer, but as you alluded to, it was kind of a very sexy thing there for a while to be able to be involved in this, and it also looked like the floodgates were opening and everybody was going to make a lot of money and it was all going to be real good, et cetera. That's why I wanted just to check in with you about how it's going on the revenue generation side. And it is reassuring, frankly, to hear that, in fact, revenues that are being used for public public benefit have actually been quite high, which is great.
Yeah. And so I think we'll see some more stability return to with litigation settled, but how the marketplace shakes out, I don't know. That'll just depend on the marketplace itself.
Absolutely.
One thing I did want to mention about our state budget that I didn't when we first started talking was, and it does offer a path or a segue into what's going on in the larger societies. When Donald Trump was reelected, I immediately began to think as a legislator, okay, what can I do? How can I help to what I could see coming? And so I called MIRA, the Massachusetts Immigrant and Refugee Association, a prominent immigrants' rights organization in our state. And I said, how can we partner? What can we do? I'd like to collaborate with you and they said, well, a big thing we want to promote and push is to get money in the state budget to hire lawyers to defend immigrants. And I said, that sounds like a great idea, because I could see coming probably a lot of action from the federal government. It was still unclear how it would shake out or what exact policies the federal government would pursue. But so I went to the House leadership and I said, look, I think there's a storm. A storm is brewing. We can see trouble coming down the road. And I think we need to put money in the state budget to get lawyers to represent immigrants. And it's kind of a reach to create a brand new line item at a time there's some pressure on the state budget to do this. But they agreed. And sure enough, the House the House goes first, then the Senate follows on the budget, put $5 million into hiring lawyers. It survived the negotiations between the House and the Senate, went to the governor, Governor Healy. She signed it. And so now it is the budget law. It is that we are spending $5 million. I just got a call yesterday from the Office of Refugees and Immigrants in the executive branch, and they put out an RFP, a quote, request for quotes for service organizations that will help hire the lawyers, put them to work. So that's a big breakthrough.
Absolutely.
When we saw that tough student snatched off the street here lawfully. She was here lawfully. That's the most important thing for Arlingtonians, for Massachusetts residents, for Americans to understand. It's one thing if somebody's committed a crime this person was here lawfully, snatched off our streets in America, a democracy where we're supposed to have rights. And by the way, rights in our Constitution, I'm sure you know this. I believe you're a lawyer. You went to law school.
I passed the bar.
There you go.
I'll do that.
So the long-standing law in our country that the rights in our country, the Bill of Rights, freedom of speech, freedom of press, due process, our right to due process, do not simply belong to citizens. They belong to persons.
Persons, exactly.
If you are physically present in the United States, those rights apply to you. That's long settled law in America. So she was lawfully here. She had those constitutional rights, and they just snatched her off the street. Sent her to Louisiana. Remember that? She's back, fortunately.
Oh, absolutely, she's
But
back.
then there have been other ICE is operating in our state. I would say of the things personal to me, as chair of higher education, continuing to push for and get free community college and very reduced rates on the other universities in our system. But then this $5 million to defend immigrants was probably, for me, the biggest thing I've been able to do. And I think we're going to see our legislature, just like we did under Trump 1, pushing back regularly against the regressive, awful stuff we're seeing coming out of Washington. Now, there are limits to what we can do.
Right.
Like
So
this
let's
big,
talk,
beautiful bill.
I just want to say we've got about 5 minutes.
Sure.
And I was intending to kind of ask you to preview the coming session, et cetera, but let's stick with this, and let's just take this to the end of this conversation. We'll talk to you in a few months, and we'll get a sense of what happened over the interim. But let's talk about this. So let me get out of your way. Talk about what you. Let me stop interrupting you. Talk about what you were just saying.
Well, we are witnessing in America. You don't need me to say this. You could say it. Many others. A period in our national policy and our federal government, unlike anything I've seen in my whole life, and I followed politics my whole life. And I wouldn't say this necessarily about Reagan. He was a Republican. He was president for 8 years. Or George Herbert Walker Bush, president for 4 years. Or George W. Bush for 8 years. What we're seeing is entirely different. We're seeing an assault against the rule of law, against our democratic way of life. We just saw Jimmy Kimmel, the comedian. He made some remarks about Charlie Kirk. Now, you can think the remarks were offensive or not so offensive. I've watched them. I didn't think they were, first of all, I think they were misinterpreted, one. But two, the Constitution is there to protect not just speech we like. The very purpose of the Constitution is to protect speech even that we might disagree with. You know, he's pulled off the air. Now tonight, matter of fact, we happen to be recording this the night Jimmy Kimmel is coming back. But that's actually the tip of the iceberg. It's gotten a lot of publicity.
Right, exactly.
Far more dangerous things are happening in terms of attack on the rule of law. We saw this big, beautiful bill, the big, ugly bill, really, that the Republicans have passed to give tax cuts to the richest people in our country. Now, this comes at a time where there's already a lot of income inequality, where the wealthiest people in our country, and this is an opinion, it's a fact, it's well documented by the Commerce Department, the Internal Revenue Service puts out data and statistics. So the share of income gains have gone largely to the wealthiest people in this country. And at a time when they're already doing incredibly well, the Republicans passed a tax cut to give them even more.
Yeah.
Even more.
Right. It's not like
and
they were struggling.
Balanced it on the backs of the poor and the least among us, the most vulnerable. So specifically, to get to my job in our state, they're going to balance and pay for. By the way, it's not balanced. It's going to blow up the deficit, which is why some Republicans were so worried about it. But they passed it anyway. It's going to blow up the national debt by trillions. But Medicaid, in our state, it's called Mass Health. Part of the way they're paying for this is low-income people are going to get kicked off their health care insurance. Imagine in the richest country in the world giving the richest people a tax cut while you kick poor people off their health insurance. That's not exaggeration. That's not me being dramatic or grandiose. That is literally what's happening. And so through a series of measures to do with how the Medicaid program is run, having to face redetermination more frequently. Well, because a lot of these people are disabled, don't have access to good internet connections, they're low income, they're already working 2 jobs just to get by. It's already well documented. A lot of them are just going to get booted off.
Clearly,
their health
if you
insurance.
create enough obstacles, you don't have to actually bar something. You just have to make it so hard.
Right, and then how will
can't do it.
we, in our state, if we can, sort of backfill and say, oh God, the federal government kicked them off their health insurance. Well, what can we do to help pay to get them coverage here through our Mass Connector or our programs here? But we don't have enough money to probably to help everyone. So, and I could, we only have so much time. I could go on and on and on. That's one glaring big example, and probably the biggest thing on the horizon at the state budget level. But there's so many things about what's happening. Just yesterday, the president saying that Tylenol and, that you shouldn't take Tylenol if you're pregnant. And then they go to experts, immunologists and people at the National Institutes of Health or Center for Disease Control, experts, people who study this, say that's not at all documented. It's certainly not conclusively. There may be one study here or there, but there's no consensus at all.
Reminiscent of some of the COVID remedies that were.
Yeah, it's just, again, we could sit here for hours of just one thing after another that make no sense, that are radical, that are not good for the country. So in my position, I'm going to fight every inch of the way to protect our democracy, to protect the citizens here, like the $5 million I got in the budget to defend immigrants. And that's my priority, is to just, during this time, we here are kind of the front line of the resistance, in a way, as state lawmakers. And so I take that role seriously, and it's really important. And, we'll get through this, but it's going to take all of us working together, and that's what I will continue to do.
Yeah. The important work that you do and the important work that happens in the State House, it's not all super interesting. Some of it is just a grind, et cetera. I get that. But it's really great to have this opportunity to just kind of get the barometric pressure via Dave Rogers of what things feel like in the Massachusetts State House right now.
Yeah.
And I do appreciate, as always, I think the audience appreciates your candor, the fact that you are willing to absolutely call things as they are, as you see it. And also your clear declaration of where you stand and what you plan to do.
Absolutely.
So thanks very much for that.
And thank you for the opportunity. It's always good to be here.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. We are back on the horse again, and we will see you in a few months.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I have been speaking with Dave Rogers. He is our state rep, or one of our 2 state reps, along with Sean Garbely, and we're glad of it. We appreciate him taking the time to come here and share his experience and opinions with us, and we appreciate you being here as well. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm James Milan. See you next time.